we have discussed some points relating to classical criticism. Now we will go into those aspects in detail. Uh, so classical criticism refers to the theories of literature and art. The theories were developed or theories began to evolve from classical origin only. From Greece and Rome, literary theory emerged. Literary theory, the very concept of literary theory was created in Greece and Rome. So, primarily, those theories, the theories which we have been discussing today, relate to two big mandarins, two renowned critics, authors, critics, thinkers, revolutionaries. They are Plato and Aristotle. Plato happens to be the teacher of Aristotle, and Socrates is the teacher of Plato. There is a trio. Three persons are there. One is Socrates, who is the teacher of Plato, and Plato is the teacher of Aristotle. So Aristotle is the student of Socrates. Okay. So they have made outstanding contributions to enrich the domain of literary criticism. And they have evolved, they have invented the concept of theory and how theory determines the merits and demerits of a literary work. Literary criticism is possible only when you have access to theory. Without theory, literary criticism is impossible. So what happens? After the theory is evolved, literary criticism became very popular. And behind the popularity, behind the rich circulation, behind the constant use, wider application of literary theory is only possible because of two persons. One is Plato, the other is Aristotle. There are also two other persons from Rome. Plato and Aristotle are from Greece. They are Greek critics. And in Rome also, there were two very renowned critics. One is Horace, the other is Longinus. So Horace and Longinus, they are the critics from Rome or Italy. Okay. So in totality, you have in the sphere of classical criticism, in the domain of classical criticism, you have four renowned critics. First is Plato, second is Aristotle, third is Horace, fourth is Longinus. So Horace and Longinus belong to Rome or Italy, whereas Plato and Aristotle belong to Greece. So all these four people, they laid the foundation of Western literary criticism. Whatever Western literary criticism we find today, or we start following today, we start reading today, we start appreciating the literature or the literary creations through the lens of Western literary criticism. So the entire credit of Western literary criticism goes to these four persons: Plato, Aristotle, Horace, Longinus. Remember, Plato and Aristotle belong to Greece. Horace and Longinus belong to Italy or Rome. They are Greek critics. These two are Roman critics. So let's take up what are the salient features, what are the characteristic features, what are the fundamental features, what are the rudimentary foundations of literary theory and classical literary criticism. The first thing to begin with, to study or to dive deep into the domain of or the ocean of literary theory, the first concept that comes to picture is imitation or mimesis. Plato calls it mimesis. Any kind of literature, poetry, novel, drama, prose, story, every genre of literature is viewed as an imitation of life, nature, reality, surrounding, circumstance, situation, platform, background, backdrop, whatever you may call it. Literary writing or creative writing is not simply possible without the art of imitation. So, literary theory and literary criticism, they are very much dependent on the art of imitation or mimesis. So, this theory of mimesis began to gain ground after Plato evolved it. So, literature is an imitation of life, nature, culture, habit, custom, tradition, heritage, legacy, background, circumstance, political environment, economic scenario, spiritual atmosphere, everything, starting from A to Z, everything relates to mimesis. In other words, literature imitates all these aspects in order to produce literary works. Plato, first of all, Plato evolved the idea of mimesis, the theory of mimesis, the concept of mimesis, and he said, "Ki art is no doubt an imitation. Literature is no doubt an imitation, but it is an imitation of the imitation." You know his attitude, his views, his approach, his impression on the writers. According to Plato, literature is based on reality. Literature is based on falsehood. Literature is based on something blatant and brazen lie. So he saw or he viewed art as twice removed from reality. He said, it is an imitation, of course, but then it is removed from reality. Literature has nothing to do with reality. But Aristotle considered literature to be the presentation of reality, the expression of reality. Try to understand the difference between theory of mimesis of Plato and the theory of mimesis of Aristotle. There is a great deal of difference. According to Plato, art is twice removed from reality, literature is twice removed from reality, but according to Aristotle, art is the presentation of reality, manifestation of reality, expression of reality, description of reality, depiction of reality, portrayal of reality. So, this is the difference in attitude between the two literary critics. One is Aristotle, the other is Plato. So, according to Plato and Aristotle as well, literature has a twofold purpose. In other words, not only Aristotle and Plato, but also Horace and Longinus, four of them believed. Plato, Aristotle, Horace, Longinus, four of them believed that literature has a twofold purpose. One is to provide entertainment, to provide joy, pleasure, delight, and the second is to enlighten, to provide moral precept, moral lesson, to give some message in order to bring about reformation in the society. So, these four of them believed, Plato, Aristotle, Horace, Longinus, they believed that literature has a twofold purpose. One is entertainment, the other is enlightenment. It entertains, it enlightens. It delights, it teaches. It not only depends on art for art's sake, rather it is art and morality. It presents the art and offers lessons. Horace emphasized that poetry especially, poetry as a very important genre, it deals with two things. One is to offer delight, second is to offer instruction. What is instruction? Instruction is moral lesson. It will teach you morality, ethics, what you should do, what you should not do. So it means literature has a reformative impact on the society. In other words, literature is very impactful in social life. If you want to bring about any change in society, you have to fall back on literature. Remember how French Revolution occurred. Which year French Revolution occurred? Yes? Any volunteer?
1789.
Huh? Sorry?
1789.
1789. Yes. In 1789, French Revolution occurred and there were three philosophers, Voltaire, Montesquieu and Rousseau. These three philosophers, through their writings, they created a kind of awareness against Louis XVI's arbitrary autocratic administration, and which created a revolution in a large scale that culminated in the overthrow of and guillotining of the king, Louis XVI. So literature is very powerful. You can't say that literature is so very light. Literature is impactful. Literature is impressive. Literature is delightful. Literature is entertaining. Literature is enlightening. Literature is moralistic. Literature is ethical. The standard of literature caters to the socio-political, cultural, economic, psychological needs, spiritual needs of the people or the readers. So Horace said, poetry teaches and poetry delights. Poetry instructs and poetry delights. Aristotle talked about tragedy. He said that literature has given us a wonderful, genre, that is tragedy. Yesterday we discussed the poetics of Aristotle. In his poetics in the poetics we find the discussion on epic as well as tragedy, as well as comedy, poetry and drama. So Aristotle talks about six things which occurs in tragedy. Yesterday I told you, does anyone remember? I told you to write it down. Any volunteer? What did I tell him about the six elements of tragedy? Who can say?
Hubris,
Yes?
amortia, parapesia, amargosis, mimesis, and catharsis.
Oh, wonderful. Who is it? Saloni.
I know, my name is Malini.
Saloni, na?
Malini,
Malini. Okay.
yeah.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Wonderful. So, hubris. Hubris is arrogance. Amartia. Amartia is tragic flaw. Peripecia. Peripecia is a turn or twist. Anagnorisis. Anagnorisis relates to self-realization. And nemesis. Nemesis leads to destruction. And catharsis. Catharsis leads to purgation. What is purgation? Purification. Purgation is purification. Purification of what? Purification of emotions. How do the emotions get purified? Who can tell me? Just make a wild guess. You are watching a play or a film or a movie. What happens in the movie and how your emotions are purified? Which emotion? Pity and fear. How are they aroused? Yeah, pity and fear. Rajveer, you are right. Pity and fear. How are they aroused and how are they purified? Malini?
They are aroused by your witnessing of the event, and they're purified by your realization that that emotion is negative or whatever.
No, no. Make it clear so that others can understand.
I might leave that to you.
Just repeat it.
I just said that
Yeah?
We can connect with our own emotion.
Where? How? How can you connect with your own emotion? When?
through the experience of witnessing
Through
or
the
reading.
experience of the movie or film, whatever we have watched.
Yes?
We can identify with something in
Aryan?
our own life, the situation in our own life, and thereby be
When
aroused
do you
by
connect? And how do you connect?
because you can identify with some experience or emotion in your own
No,
life.
that's okay. That's okay. But tell me the situation. When does it arise?
Pardon me?
When does that situation arise while watching a movie?
When we see the downfall of the main person whom we identify with,
Yeah, absolutely. Then what happens?
then there will be fear or pity created in our mind, and that will lead to the purification of our mind.
Okay. And fear? Fear?
Fear that the same thing, the same misfortune that befalls the hero or the lead of the movie or book that we read or the play
Okay.
that we watch could also
Okay.
happen to us.
Wonderful. Is it Archana?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me make it crystal clear. Supposing you are watching a movie, the protagonist is being, tortured, tormented, harassed, disappointed by the villain. And the villain is thrashing him, beating him, tormenting him a lot. At that time, he is bleeding and he is bruised. At that time, you are having pity for the protagonist because protagonist is supposed to be a good man. He's a virtuous man. But the villain is a vicious man. He has all the vices. So since the villain is torturing him, At that time, pity is aroused in your heart. And at the same time, you are anticipating. You have transported yourself to a different world and you identify yourself with the protagonist. Had I been in the position of the protagonist, I would have been beaten in the same manner that he is beating the protagonist. So at that time, you are shivering out of fear. You are feeling shocked. You are shaken. And in the process of watching the movie, both the emotions, pity and fear, they get purified. And after the movie is over, you come to the reality and you feel you are feeling relaxed. Nothing such thing has happened. That was a film and I am in a real world. So that is how the emotions of pity and fear get purgated, purified in the process of watching a film or a drama or a show or a movie, whatever. So that is how Aristotle said this cathartic effect is brought about by tragedy. And he also said tragedy occurs because of 6 factors, 6 elements. First is hubris. Hubris relates to arrogance, pride of the protagonist. Then hamartia. Hamartia relates to the fault, the mistake, the drawback, the shortcoming, the flaw of the protagonist. It is called tragic flaw. What is the flaw in Hamlet? The flaw in Hamlet was
he's indecisive.
indecisiveness. Very good. Indecisiveness and dilatoriness. What is the flaw in Othello?
Jealousy?
Yeah, sexual jealousy. And what is the flaw in Macbeth?
Greed.
Yeah, vaulting ambition. Use these words. The words I am using, use these words. Vaulting ambition, Vaulting, unbridled ambition. He wanted to be the king of Scotland and killed Duncan just by hearing the prophecy from the 3 witches. And what is the flaw in King Lear? Malsi? It is filial ingratitude. In King Lear, filial ingratitude is the tragic flaw. And the flaw of King Lear is he wanted to invite the love, the expression of love for him as a father. Goneril, Regan, and Cordelia. He had 3 daughters. He didn't have a son. So he wanted to share his property, distribute his property among the 3 daughters. And he decided that the property shall be shared according to the quantum of love they profess for me, which is very impractical and which is not possible. So the 2 cunning daughters, Goneril and Regan, they, magnified, amplified, exaggerated things out of proportion and said, Ki Papa, there is no object on the earth which we love better than you. You are our life force. You are everything to us. But Cordelia, she was unmarried. She said, Ki Papa, I don't want to make any pretension. Honestly speaking, I love you very much. But after I get married, my love will be divided between my hubby and my papa. The poor man got, totally irritated, annoyed, and deprived her of the property and all that. The tragic suffering followed. So this is how, Shakespeare has narrated, portrayed the tragic flaw of the protagonist in the 4 important tragedies. 4 important tragedies of Shakespeare are Hamlet, Othello, Macbeth, King Lear. You make any reference to tragedy, obviously these 4 tragedies will come into picture. Then what happens? Peripecia. In peripecia, you find there is a certain turn in the plot, in the development of the plot. And before that, you must know how four aspects of drama is there. One is plot, second is character, third is dialogue, fourth is atmosphere. Remember it. Plot, character, dialogue, atmosphere. And as far as the structure of the drama is concerned, you have a pyramidal structure. It is like a pyramid. You have seen a pyramid, like a triangular shape and all that. So it starts with the exposition. When it starts with the exposition, you are introduced with different characters. The playwright gives the background, talks about the place where the play is going to take place. He will talk about the different characters, expose the different characters to you. To you means to the readers. And then you have to, get acquainted with the idiosyncrasies of these characters. What are their likes and dislikes? What are their peculiarities? What are their eccentricities? What are their good qualities? What are their vices? What is their conduct? What is their character? How do they behave? How do they manage themselves in the society? What is their social relationship? Do they like other people or not? So like this, you get introduced to the characters. Then after exposition, the plot shall move in upward direction, which is known as rising action or complication. In technical term, we call it rising action or complication. It will start moving in the upward direction till such time it reaches the climax. Climax is the optimum position that the play or the plot of the play moves. You will find in Shakespearean play around Act 3. Middle of Act 3, you find the climax. Then after the climax, it starts taking a downward turn, which is called the falling action or denouement. D-E-N-O-U-E-M-E-N-T, denouement. Then in the falling action, the play is coming towards a close. And finally, it is catastrophic or the tragic end. Catastrophe in case of tragedy, in case of comedy, it is called conclusion. So this is basically the structure of the play. Then in the peripecia, you find there is a turn in the movement of the plot, in the progress of the plot. Something is introduced and it takes a different turn. Then comes anagnorisis. Anagnorisis is a kind of self-realization of the protagonist. But at that time, thing is out of bag, the cat is out of the bag. Things are out of control. He can't change the situation. Whatever damage was supposed to be caused, it had already been caused. He can't control it now. So this self-realization or anagnorisis should have come earlier. Had it come earlier, the tragic events, the tragic flow of events could have been checked. But no, it could not be done. Then comes nemesis. Nemesis is a kind of destruction, ruin, damage, a kind of downfall, whatever you may call it, damnation. So at that time, the time has come for the hero or the tragic protagonist to destroy everything. Nemesis has already occurred and his future is totally doomed. He can't retrieve the time he has wasted. He can't revive his original position. He can't change the situation. He can't modify the movement of events. The events have already moved. And once they have moved, they have caused the damage. And the damage, once it is caused, it cannot be retrieved. So he has to willy-nilly tolerate it. Then, after nemesis comes catharsis, which we have already discussed. Catharsis is the purgation of emotion through pity and fear. What emotions? Pity and fear. Those emotions are purgated or purified while watching the play or reading the play or witnessing the play. By the end of the play, you find your emotions are purgated, purified, saturated, and you feel totally convinced what has happened due to what. So this is the tragedy that Aristotle talked about. Tragedy has these 6 features, and these 6 features, they affect very much, they are very impactful for the readers. Then the classical critics, they also talked about unity in the play. They said the classical unities of time, unity of place, unity of action should be maintained in a play. They also said there should be proportion, there should be harmony. Things should not be out of control. These things should not be, disunited. There should be harmony, there should be order, there should be discipline, there should be proportion. And especially the playwright should observe the 3 unities of time, place, and action. Aristotle first talked about action, but later on, the critics accepted it, and they also said not only unity of action should be observed, unity of time, unity of place, unity of action should be observed for the facility of the readers. Then Horace talked about the decorum. He said when you are writing literature, maybe poetry, maybe drama, so there should be a proper decorum, decency. You can't write anything, rubbish, anything unwanted, unwarranted, unwelcome. So whatever you are going to write, it should have relevance. Social relevance, cultural relevance, psychological, spiritual, economic, political relevance. So whatever you are writing, you should first ensure that it is relevant to the present context. So Horace talked about proper decorum, and he also talked about the style. He said you should write in such a style and deal with the subject in such a manner so that people will be totally overwhelmed. They will appreciate, they will observe, and they will draw their conclusion. It's a wonderful style that the writer has maintained. Say, for example, any play that is written, it should have been written in a style. What is the style of Shakespeare? Shakespeare used to maintain the style or the method or the procedure of dividing the entire play into 5 acts. In each act, there will be 5 to 6 scenes. Some acts also contain 3 or 4 scenes. So after the end of the 5th act, the play comes to a close. And he has designed it in such a manner that the play will comprise 2.5 hours or maximum 3 hours. If it is beyond 3 hours, people will feel monotonous. People will feel bored and they will not be interested to watch the play. So the style of Shakespeare is very clear. Not only that, he also introduces some clowns, some entertainers, court jesters. So they will create comedy, they will generate comedy, and that comedy will create a kind of, humor, a kind of entertainment for the readers or the viewers. Then the Western critics or the classical critics, they also emphasized that there should be universality, universal truth of human nature should be portrayed in literature. So Plato, Aristotle, Horace, Longinus, 4 of them emphasized that literature, means all the classical critics, they emphasized that literature should portray the universal truth of human nature. And literature should be a kind of platform to dish out the universal truth of human nature. And they should put focus on the general human experience rather than personal or subjective emotions. This is very important. What did they argue? They argued that a poet or a dramatist or a novelist should never focus on his own personal experience. Rather, he should focus on something universal experience. In other words, they should be objective in their approach instead of subjective. There are 2 types of literature. One is subjective literature, the other is objective literature. In case of subjective literature, what happens? People used to talk about their own matters, their own issues. But in objective literature, we find the general issues, the universal issues, the issues which relate to everyone in the society are depicted. So universality is supposed to be there in literature. Literature should never be subjective, rather it should be objective and universal. Then there should be rhetorical elements in literature. Literature should be tied closely with rhetorics and ethics. What is rhetorics? It should be persuasive. There should be persuasion in literature. And the writers should talk about the moral values. They should portray such characters which or who carry ethics and morality with them. And poetry especially should be didactic, instructive, preceptive in nature. There should be the display of imagination, no doubt, but along with the display of imagination, there should be morality to be taught. Poetry should teach morality, poetry should teach virtue, poetry should teach ethics. And Horace and Plato, both of them were skeptical of poets. They were very critical of poets, but still then they indicated that there should be moral element in poetry. And apart from that,
Hello
Longinus
everyone.
emphasized, yes? Sorry, did someone speak something? Okay. Longinus said, okay, there should be sublimity in literature. Literature should be sublime. It should contain the art of inspiring people. It should transport the audience or the reader to a different world altogether. It should create an aura of sublimity around them. So literature should be sublime, Longinus said. Longinus always talks about sublimity in literature. And the sublime aspect is very important. Literature should contain the power to uplift, to inspire, and to transport the readers beyond the ordinary world to a sublime world. Then the classical critics, they talked about poet as a craftsman. The poet should be like a craftsman, an artist who used to follow certain rules and regulations. Then comes the impact of literature and the role of author. Author is very important, and whatever he writes, he should write like a craftsman. He should incorporate certain rules, certain order, so that that order is never violated. And he should adapt a particular technique. He should subscribe to the tradition. And the author should have the objective approach, as I told you. It should never be subjective. It should be objective. The classical critics such as Plato, Aristotle, Horace, Longinus, they began to judge the literary works according to the principles of beauty, principles of technique, principles of form, and principles of function. And as I told you, criticism relates to reception, perception, interpretation, absorption, assimilation, expansion, and evaluation. So, the writer must write it in such a manner so that the perception, analysis, and evaluation and interpretation become easier and become very fair and impartial. Such principles of impartiality, objectivity, they had a very lasting impression, and they were sustained through the subsequent ages, such as the age of Renaissance, neoclassical age. The stress was put on decorum, style, reason, order, universality, and all those things. So, this is how the classical critics used to assess or show their approach towards literature. Yeah, that tech buddy has come. Do you notice that tech buddy fellow is creating disturbance? Your
Yes,
tech buddy.
sir.
Sir, every time he comes on, we lose you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So even if I mute him, he's unmuting and creating problem. Why these people come, I don't understand. If he is not interested, why should he be allowed to come? These people also.
This has been happening in all the classes, not just in
So we
our
have already
institute.
discussed the difference between Plato and Aristotle. As I told you, on the theory of imitation and art, both of them have different approaches to literature. As I told you,
Hello. Hello, sir.
for Plato,
Hello, sir.
art is an imitation, which is called the concept of mimesis, and it is an imitation of appearance, not of reality itself. Plato said,
Sir, what is the
Okay.
difference between appearance and art?
sorry,
What is the difference between appearance and art?
Plato said, na. Plato said कि it is not real. It appears to be real, but it is not actually real. Because Plato
Oh,
is very critical of the artist or the writer, unlike Aristotle. Aristotle is very fond of the writers, respectful of the writers, but Plato is not. So that's why he says कि art is an imitation, which is not the imitation of reality, but it is the imitation of appearance. This is important. That is the basic difference between Plato and
so
Aristotle.
art is a limitation of appearance.
No. According to Plato, he evolved a theory called the theory of mimesis. And according to the theory of mimesis, Plato views art as an imitation. Number one. And what kind of imitation? He says it is not the imitation of reality, but it is the imitation of appearance which is not real. Got it?
Okay, so do you mean like appearance is not real?
No, appearance is not real. What
Hello.
appears is not
Hello,
real.
sir.
You
Hello, sir.
ill-mannered fellow, don't you have courtesy?
Sir,
Stop
who
it.
is shouting this, sir? Are you shouting this?
No, this.
Sir, are
Take
you?
body, take body.
Sir, this is not a manner to talk, sir. Why are you shouting this?
Yeah, you are right. Ill-mannered.
Please leave.
Sir, kindly throw these people out, whoever is creating
No,
disturbance.
the
and
problem
toxic-
is I can't throw them out. The
Okay.
problem is I can't throw them out. Only RC Bhubaneswar can throw them out. You mail them. One tech body, one CTF cyber.
Okay, sure, sir.
CTF cyber and tech buddy. These two persons be disqualified from attending classes. Look at the noise. How ill-mannered fellows.
Sir, can you please call the IGNOU office and let them know what is going on now?
Okay.
Yes, sir. Please, sir.
Doing it.
Your tech buddy, please stop it.
Sir, kindly continue.
CTF ସାଇବର ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଆଚ୍ଛା କରିଦେଲେ ଆଚ୍ଛା ମତେ ବି ସେ ରିମୁଭ ଏ ଯୋଉ ମ୍ୟୁଟ କରିବା ପାୱାରଟା ଦେଇ ଦିଅନ୍ତୁ ଲାଷ୍ଟ ଟାଇମ ଯେମିତି ଦେଇଥିଲେ ନାଇଁ ହଉନି ପରା ଏଇଟା ହଉନି ମୁଁ ଦେଖିଲି ଯେ ସେ ବାରମ୍ବାର ଇଏ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ଅଭଦ୍ର ଗୁଡା ମାନେ ଏତେ ଇଡିଅଟିକ ବୁଝିଲେ ହଁ ପରା ଅନ୍ୟ ପିଲାମାନେ କେତେ ବିରକ୍ତ ହଉଛନ୍ତି କିଛି ନାହିଁ ସେମାନେ ସେ ଆକ୍ଚୁଆଲି ଷ୍ଟୁଡେଣ୍ଟ ନୁହନ୍ତି ମ ବାହାରୁ କିଏ ପଶି ଆସୁଛନ୍ତି ଟେକ୍ ବଡି ଗୋଟେ ଆଉ ସିଟିଏଫ୍ ସାଇବର ଗୋଟେ ଏଇ ଯୋଉ ବିଚିତ୍ର ନାଁ ଗୁଡାକ ଏଗୁଡା ଜମା ଆଲାଉ କରନ୍ତୁ ଓକେ ହଁ ଠିକ ଅଛି ସେଠି
They've been removed, sir. Yes.
ଥ୍ୟାଙ୍କ ୟୁ ମତେ ଏମ୍ପାୱାର କରିଦେଲେ ମୁଁ ଏଇଠି କରିଦେବି ଆପଣଙ୍କ ଡିଷ୍ଟର୍ବ ପିଲା ମତେ କହିଲେ ସାର୍ ଡାକିକି କହିଦିଅନ୍ତୁ ହଉ ଠିକ ଅଛି ଓକେ ଥ୍ୟାଙ୍କ ୟୁ Okay. So, Plato said that it is an imitation, no doubt. Art is an imitation, literature is an imitation. But the problem is, it is not the imitation of reality. Plato said that art should have imitated reality. But instead of imitating reality, it is imitating something unreal, something appearance, something illusory, something surreal. So, he never trusted. So, this is how is the idea of Plato. Plato said that reality exists in the realm of form, in the realm of ideas, and it is the perfect form of beauty. Objects in the physical world are the imperfect copies So Plato said that art is the imitation of something appearance, not reality. And he also observed He also observed that the physical world is an imperfect copy. Art is imitating those imperfect copies and making it a copy of the copy. So he said, the art is not only twice removed from reality or once removed from reality, but it is thrice removed from reality. He also raised another objection. He said, the art doesn't appeal to the reason, intellect. Art only appeals to the senses. How many senses are there? 5 senses. The 5 senses are touch, taste, smell, sound, and hearing. Sight and hearing. Touch, taste, smell, sight, and hearing. So, art appeals to the senses, but not to reason. It doesn't appeal to intellect. Art appeals to imagination. It doesn't appeal to reason. Art misleads people. Art is very misleading. Art misguides people. Plato lodges a very serious allegation. Plato is very critical of artists, poets, writers, novelists, dramatists, etc. And he says art is misleading, art causes confusion, art doesn't appeal to the reason, art doesn't appeal to the intellect, it appeals to the imagination only. It appeals to the sense only, but not reason. For example, a painter paints a bed. He simply paints it, but he doesn't have the skill to prepare a bed. He simply paints what? The outward picture of the bed. Look at the example. Supposing a painter is an artist. As an artist, the painter is painting a bed.
Residential is mixed with commercial and common areas, vice versa. So go have a look, right, and give me the right amount of time you need, but realistic, yeah, because you already spent 1 week on it. Yeah. So, but give me still, regardless, give me some timeline that you are more than confident whatever you do, it will be perfect for us.
Yes, because
All right. What do you need to help you to get this sorted? What do you need my help? Do you need Sum itself? Do you need to have a word with Park or Ritik or the unit selections? What do you need? You need the speaking with Mukund. So I can help
Painter
you.
is simply painting the
Whenever
bed,
I can.
but he doesn't know the skill. Well, he lacks the skill of preparing the bed like a carpenter. He doesn't have the technique, doesn't have the efficiency, competence, the technical know-how to create a bed, to make a bed. He simply paints the outward picture of the bed. So that is why making the bed এই পার্থ ডক্টর কি উল্লেখ ও সাউন্ডটা শুনছেন তো সাউন্ডটা পার্থ ডক্টর আর ଗୋଟେ ବିରାଜ ବର୍ମା ରିମୁଭ କରନ୍ତୁ ଆଉ ତୁରନ୍ତ ମତେ ଦିଅନ୍ତୁ ability ଭେରି ମାନେ ଏମ୍ବିସନ୍ କେମିତି ଏମାନେ ଆସୁଛନ୍ତି ମୁଁ ବୁଝିପାରୁଛି ହଁ ବିରାଜ ବର୍ମା ଆଉ ପାର୍ଥ ଡକ୍ଟର ଆପଣଙ୍କୁ ଦିଶୁନି କି ସେ ନାଁ ଗୁଡା ଯୋଉ ଆଇଡି ଗୁଡାକ ସେ ପାର୍ଥ ଡକ୍ଟର ଟିକେ ୱାଚଫୁଲ ଥାନ୍ତୁ ବର୍ତ୍ତମାନ ସେମାନେ 3-4ଟା ହେଇଗଲେଣି ମାନେ ମୁଁ ଭାବୁଛି ସେଇ ପିଲା ଗୁଡାକ ଅଲଗା ଆଇଡିରେ ଜଏନ୍ କରୁଛନ୍ତି ସେଇ ଯୋଉ 2ଟା ପିଲା अलगा आईडी रे जॉइन करो. So Plato is very critical of the artists, as I have told you since last day. Even from the beginning, I have been telling you there is a difference in the approach between Plato and Aristotle. Plato is very critical of the artists, whereas the other critic, that is Aristotle, is very respectful, and he provides maximum recognition to the writers and authors. But Plato is very critical, and Plato says that art is twice removed from reality. And he also sometimes says it is thrice removed from reality, and he has given the example of the bed. For example, the bed is painted by a painter on a piece of paper, on a piece of canvas. When it is painted on the piece of canvas, the bed cannot come into any use. It cannot be used. And if you ask the painter to apply his technical skill and prepare a bed made of wood, he cannot do it. That's why he says the painter only imitates the appearance, not the reality. Reality is the bed itself, the object itself. But the painter cannot represent reality, he represents the appearance of a bed. Then he says the artist misguides the audience, misguides the people, misguides the readers, and art caters to emotion, passion, impulse, irrationality, falsehood, unreality, dream, fantasy, etc. But art doesn't cater to reality. Art doesn't cater to the concrete experience. In Plato's Republic, he suggests that poets should be censored. Poets should be banished. Which poets? Poets like Homer. And he said that poetry corrupts the soul, misleads the citizens. Remember the language. In book 10, in the Republic, book 10, Plato said, the poets like Homer should be banished because they corrupt the audience, the reader, the society. And they corrupt the soul also, soul of the readers. They misguide the citizens. They mislead the people. The art which promotes virtue and truth should be acceptable. He also said, if art promotes virtue, if art promotes truth, we should accept it, otherwise we should reject it. Then Aristotle said that art is imitation. Plato said art is imitation, but art is imitation of appearance. Aristotle said art is imitation, but it is the imitation of reality. He had a very positive attitude towards art, literature. He said, it is the natural instinct of the poet to imitate. The natural instinct of the poet is to imitate. And how does he imitate? He imitates the experience, the feelings, the passions, the emotions. And every human being is imitative by nature. Aristotle believed that every human being is imitative by nature. And imitation is a natural process. Learning and taking pleasure is the process, is a part of it.
Yes, sir.
Every human being is imitative by nature. And once he imitates, what does he get? He gets pleasure. He also gets wisdom through mimesis. Mimesis teaches him pleasure, teaches him wisdom. He learns so many things through mimesis. Poetry, drama, and art, they imitate reality. They never imitate appearance. But Plato said, poetry, drama, novel, art, they imitate appearance.
क्या आप लेटे लेटे महीने के लाखों कमाना
But
चाहते हैं?
Aristotle says,
पलट के लेटिए, मैं कस्टमर लेके आ रहा हूँ.
but Aristotle says, they never imitate appearance. The poet, the novelist, the dramatist, the writer, the painter, the artist, they never imitate appearance. They imitate reality. If they imitate reality, then it is worthwhile. We should appreciate art and study literature. It not only makes a copy, it imitates human actions, universal truths, objective reality, as well as emotion and imagination. So he described art as something very useful. It is not based on imitation only. Rather, it is recreating the reality. Art helps the writer to recreate, to re-innovate reality. Art also idealizes, renovates, restructures the values, teaches the morals to human beings in society. And the job of an artist or the job of a poet is not only to record what happened in the past, but he has to present it, what could happen in future based on the past experience. So the author or the writer, he has to depend on the past experience and he has to project his own views as to what could happen in future. It's the job of the artist to foresee the future. He is not cynical. He is not pessimistic. He is not nihilistic. Rather, he is very optimistic, very positive in his outlook, and he always wants things to take place in the right perspective. The function of art is not only to copy, but to recreate. Aristotle said, Tragedy brings about purgation, purification. Purification of pity and fear. So how can it corrupt? Plato said, art corrupts, poetry corrupts. But Aristotle said, art doesn't corrupt. Art has a healing effect on humanity. Art educates, art refines human conduct. Art brings about balance, brings about mental balance among the people. Art reveals truths about human nature, action, ethical choices. And Aristotle believed art is imitation of life, art is imitation of reality, imitation of action. Art is a source of pleasure, source of entertainment, source of delight, source of knowledge, source of education, source of wisdom, as well as source of catharsis. Art is valuable from the standpoint of ethics, morality, intellect, and wisdom. So if you make a comparison between Plato and Aristotle, it becomes very clear. Whatever Plato said about art, Aristotle refuted it.
Plato.
And Aristotle said, that art brings us closer to universal truth. Art expresses the reality. Art is not the copy of appearance or copy of illusion. Art is the presentation of reality. Plato said art distracts us from truth and corrupts morality. Aristotle said art educates, entertains, refines the conduct of people.
Yes, sir.
Plato said art is deceptive and dangerous, corrupting. Aristotle said art is purgative, art is moralistic, art is cathartic.
Lord Padma.
Plato said art is suspicious and artists should be banned. But Aristotle said artists are very useful to society. We should appreciate and analyze their art, their skill, their perception, their talent, instead of condemning them, blaming them. Aristotle also brought about his theory of tragedy, which I have already discussed with you. Tragedy is an imitation of action that is complete, serious, and of a certain magnitude, embellished in each kind of artistic ornament, several kinds in being found in separate parts of the play, in form of action, not of narrative, bringing about a purgation of emotions like pity and fear, known as catharsis. So tragedy is mimesis. Subscribing to the theory of mimesis, Aristotle described tragedy as a part of the mimesis. He said tragedy is mimesis. Tragedy is imitation. Imitation of what? Not appearance, as Plato said. Aristotle justifies here.
Aristotle
justifies here. It is not the
कौन है यार ये पागल जादू बनी भाई उठ जाओ सुबह होगी
I request all of you to send mails to RC Bhubaneswar. To be very vigilant about these mischievous elements and ask them to be very strict in granting IDs and access to online link.
Sir, we had them in almost every class, and I have sent emails. Received no response. Received no response.
Acha, does it happen in every class?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Oh, this is really very ridiculous and unfair.
Yes, sir.
And I don't understand why do they come?
Because Plato said that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Actually, these people are cowards. इनकी शक्ल दिखाई देना तो
Yeah,
ये
exactly.
बिल्कुल
Absolutely.
मतलब
Absolutely.
they will become like worms. वो कीड़े बन
Yes,
जाएंगे.
yes. I
अगर
agree with
सामने
you.
इनको ये दिखाई देना तो एकदम से ये डर के
I
मारे ना उड़
appreciate
जाएंगे.
you people are so sensible guys. You are so sensible and so considerate, so devoted to studies and all that. And look on the other side. There are such type of people. I am astonished. I am surprised.
They are absolute cowards. इसलिए ऐसा कर रहे हैं. शक्ल दिखाने की हिम्मत कर.
They don't have himmat. Rightly said. They
Yeah,
don't have
सुदर्शन आप दिखा दो शक्ल हम भी दिखा देंगे.
Now somebody is writing we code.
I will show you my boots if you come to me and sorry to sir, but I'll show you my boots. Okay.
कौन से
I'll
हैं?
show you my boots, and you need only boots.
लेदर वाले हैं कि दूसरे?
You and your cronies.
Yeah, because Plato said like boots are valuable.
Okay. And the IDs are very funny.
Yes, sir.
What young tech, cyber,
No,
cyber.
they are all मतलब those mawalis who get kicked around
Yes, yes.
everywhere.
Yes, yes.
So
Yes.
these mawalis have joined here for entertainment because if they show their faces, they will be kicked.
Ah, exactly. No, it is actually the lookout of the RC Bhubaneswar to streamline all these things. But
Sir, I've even complained to them that people like me who are not in your time zone stay back here till I sometimes have to be here till 2 a.m.
You
because
just now
these guys
ring
are
them.
disrupting.
You just ring them.
RC and complaint about this.
Okay,
Here.
please. Then he said, we have partly discussed it. Aristotle talked about the elements of tragedy. I have told you the elements like plot, which Aristotle calls mythos, mythos. The soul of tragedy is the plot. Plot is the soul of tragedy according to Aristotle. It is coherent, unified, and a wonderful sequence of events. Then you have the character or ethos. He calls the plot mythos and calls the character as ethos. Moral qualities. The characters contain moral qualities and choices of the protagonist. Then he says that there is another element known as thought or dianoia. Plot, character, thought. Thought is called dianoia. Dianoia. And what is thought? Thought contains the ideas, the themes, the reasoning, etc. Then comes the diction. Diction is the language, the lexis. For example, the choice of words, the style, the expression. Then another element is melody or melos. In tragedy also there is melody or musical element, which is very important in Greek drama. Then comes the spectacle or apsis. Spectacle is the visual effect, presenting some scenery, presenting the stagecraft, and all these things, they depend on the external factors. Then Aristotle switched over to, this is about the elements of tragedy. Then after the elements of tragedy, he talks about the structure of the plot. What should be the structure of the plot? The structure of the plot should be complete. It should have certain magnitude, because he has defined tragedy as an imitation of action that is complete, serious, and of a certain magnitude. So the plot should have some magnitude, some depth. It should neither be too short nor too long. It should be well balanced. It should be kept properly in length. It should neither be too lengthy nor too short. There should be unification, or it should be presented in a unified manner. All the events in the plot should contribute to the main action. Whatever event is attributed or incorporated, it should have some kind of logical relation with the main plot. And event should be logical, not arbitrary. Any event that is brought in or that is added, it should be necessary, it should be warranted, and it should be logically fitted. Aristotle makes a distinction between simple plot and complex plot. Simple plot is that plot which has either reversal or recognition. But in complex plot, we find elements like peripecia, elements like anagnorisis, and both of them together, they bring about the catharsis. Peripecia, the turn or the reversal. Anagnorisis, self-realization or discovery. Both peripecia and anagnorisis bring about catharsis. So in the theory of tragedy, you come across very wonderful concepts such as hubris, hamartia, peripecia, anagnorisis, nemesis, catharsis. Then he talks about the qualities of a tragic hero. What are the qualities? The qualities of a tragic hero, firstly, he should be a person from a noble birth. He should come from a noble origin, a royal origin, aristocratic origin. And secondly, his action shall lead him from prosperity to adversity. What action? The flaws in his character, hamartia in his character, will lead him from prosperity to adversity. And his action will evoke pity and fear. For example, you have found what happened in Hamlet, what happened in Oedipus, Sophocles' tragedy of Oedipus Rex. There you find Oedipus was flawed, committed errors, underwent reversal, and finally catharsis. So, according to Aristotle, tragedy is a moral, psychological, and aesthetic experience where you find plot and character. They work together to bring about the catharsis and purgation of emotions like pity and fear. Then we will move on to the last section in block 2, criticism as dialogue. In the postmodern literary theory, criticism is considered as a dialogue, and this is viewed as a key concept. Instead of viewing criticism or treating criticism or considering criticism as a final judgment, authoritative judgment on any work, this approach of dialogue believes that there should be a conversation between the text, the reader, and the critics. One odd critic, whatever he remarks on a particular work of art, it should not be taken as final. He has no authority to judge. One person's judgment is not enough. So, criticism as a dialogue involves a system called dialogic view, dialogism, where a conversation is initiated between the text and the reader and critic. In the concept of dialogic criticism or dialogism, we find that criticism is considered as a communication. But in traditional criticism, we find it aims at evaluation. But in dialogic criticism, we find it aims at communication, interaction, interpretation, engagement. And finally, the meaning emerges after the discussion, rather than a fixed conclusion. So in the dialogic view, criticism is aimed at interpretation and engagement with the text, where meaning emerges in discussion rather than fixed conclusion. So you should remember that traditional criticism believes in interpretation, evaluation, judgment. But dialogic criticism believes in discussion, interaction instead of fixed conclusion. The pioneer of dialogic criticism was Mikhail Bakhtin. Mikhail Bakhtin is the pioneer of dialogic criticism. Bakhtin emphasized that literature and language are dialogic. There should be a dialogue between the text and the reader. It is always shaped by multiple voices, multiple contexts. Criticism is not a monologue of the critic, a dialogue between the critic and the author. Monologue is the words or conversation by one person. Dialogue is the conversation between two persons. So, Bakhtin believed that criticism should never be oriented towards the critic's judgment. Whatever the critic said, that should not be the final word. Rather, the reader should have a say. The text and the reader, they should have a conversation and mutually agreed conclusion. Whatever the critic says, that should not be the final verdict. Bakhtin emphasized that literature and language are dialogic. There is always a dialogue between literature and language, or the language used by the reader. And this literature and language, they are not shaped by one or two voices, but multiple voices used to shape them. So he contained, or he needed, he argued that criticism is not based on the judgment of the critic. The critic, whatever he says, we should never accept it. We should try to analyze. We should try to dissect. We should try to delve deep into the matter and draw our own inference. So it should be mutually agreed. If the critic passes the judgment, that becomes one-sided. But when there is a dialogue, when there is a conversation, when there is an interaction between the text, the reader, the critic, multiple voices are involved. Multiple contexts emerge. When multiple contexts emerge, the best thing emerges. The best judgment, fair judgment emerges. And there is no scope for the critic to be partial, to be biased, to be prejudiced against a particular author. So whatever he will say, that will be very impartial, objective, dispassionate. So Bhaktin is very correct. In making the assessment, the literature should be dialogic instead of being a monologue. It can't be a monologue. It should be dialogic. It should be dialogic instead of becoming. Criticism is not a monologue. Bhaktin is very firm in his opinion. And he said, it is a dialogue between the critic, the author, the text, and the readers. Reader response critics, like Stanley Fish, they believe that meaning arises in the interaction between text and reader.
And he said, so dialogue between the critic, the author, the text, and the readers. Acton is very firm in his opinion. He said, it's a matter between the critic.
So Stanley Fish said, hey, look, the readers, they constitute a major part. As far as literary criticism is concerned, the reader should be given the proper authority, the proper privilege to make an assessment of a particular literary work. And the meaning arises from the interaction between the text and the reader. Reader response theory reveals, as described by Stanley Fish, the pioneer of reader response theory, Stanley Fish argues that the real meaning in a fair, objective, impartial manner emerges when there is an interaction between the text and the reader.
I cannot hear you, sir.
There is another critic
Hello, can't
named
hear you, sir.
H.G.
No.
Gadamer.
Yeah. Okay.
He brought out an essay known as Philosophical Hermeneutics, in which he stressed the fusion of horizons. What horizons? The horizon of understanding of the reader, and the horizon of explaining by the writer. So Gadamer, H.G. Gadamer, Hans G. Gadamer, he said that there is a fusion of horizons and interpretation happens through the dialogue between the historical context of the text and the present perspective of the reader. He says that interaction is important, not only the interaction in the present context, but the interaction by taking the background of the past into consideration. Your interpretation will be fair, your judgment will be fair, your analysis will be fair, your evaluation and perception will be fair, provided you take a back in the perspective of time and look into the historical background of the subject matter. Then
Yeah.
you look into the historical perspective of the subject matter and then consider the text in the present perspective of the reader. Then only you can find out, you can churn out a very impartial, fair view of the literary text. So the past and present should be fused together. The past horizon, the past background should be fused with the present background. Then only the judgment will be fair.
जादूमणि नोट्स बना रहे हैं भाई, हमें भी दे देना भाई.
Every critical act or every act of criticism, every act of critical judgment, critical perception should be based on the conversation with past interpretation and tradition. Remember remember Eliot's essay, Tradition and Individual Talent, in which he had given a lot of emphasis on the importance of tradition. Similarly, the eminent critic Julia Kristeva has also talked about intertextuality. Intertextuality reveals that text and criticism constitute a network of dialogue. Text and criticism constitute a network of dialogue. So when that network of dialogue is possible through intertextuality, and intertextuality is suggested by the renowned critic Julia Kristeva, the postmodern critic. She says that the text and criticism, they form a network of dialogue, and that network of dialogue is possible only when you look into the past, compare the past with the present. After making the comparison, you try to form your own judgment, which is better, whether past is better or present is better.
Past is
You can
better.
also suggest what could be done to improve the present scenario, All these things are possible. Then criticism as a dialogue should be open-ended. There should not be any dogmatic perception. There should not be any authoritarian judgment. And the interpretation should be open. Criticism should be open-ended.
मेरी सिलेक्शन हो गई है। हाँ, मेरी सिलेक्शन हो गई है। अभी किसी ने भेजा है मेरे पे छोड़ा है। मेरी मुझे यकीन नहीं आ रहा कि मेरी सिलेक्शन हो सकती है। यानी मैं बेवकूफ हूँ। मैंने कब कहा? मेरी सिलेक्शन
So criticism is always encouraged to be open-ended. It should not be judgmental. It should not be authoritarian. It should not be based on dogmatic belief. It should not be based on prejudice. It should not be based on bias. Rather, it should be open-ended. It should not close a text, but it should give the scope for reinterpretation, for exploring new contexts and new interpretations. So what is the job of a critic? A critic is like an active participant in an ongoing debate.
कौन है ये लोग? कहाँ से आते हैं? कौन है ये लोग?
So what happens? The critic is an active participant, and whenever he participates like an ordinary reader, and he takes active part in the ongoing debate between the text and the reader. So before making a judgment or before delivering a verdict, he should realize the situation. He should understand how things are moving and what plot is mentioned here. What are the aspects that the author is referring to? Whether it is having some relevance to the contemporary society. Has he derived any inspiration from the past? Has he studied the tradition? Has he referred to any past events? Then only he can enjoy the text. So a critic, instead of passing the judgment, instead of delivering the verdict, he should behave like a mere participant. He should be a discerning reader first, a perceptive reader first. After that only he should try to be a critic, and he should give his own opinion. And while giving the opinion, he should never be judgmental. He should never be authoritative. He should be open-ended, and criticism as such should be open-ended. This kind of view in the domain of criticism brings about what? Universal tolerance. It brings about plurality. It brings about multiple reading facilities. And it brings about, or it opens up scope for re-engagement with literature. So criticism as a dialogue means, in a nutshell, that criticism is dynamic, criticism is open-ended, criticism should be based on dialogism based on dialogue between the reader, the text, critique, and criticism should be interactive. It should never be judgmental. It should never be authoritative. It should never be one-sided or biased. It should be very objective. It should be dispassionate. It should be impartial. And it should be like a kind of conversation. As Mikhail Bakhtin has said, it should be dialogic. Criticism should be referred or should be prepared on the basis of dialogue. Let the critic talk to the author. Let the critic talk to the reader before giving his views either in favor or against the writer. So the critic, the text, the author, the tradition, the reader, the community should have mutual conversation, and then only criticism will be very useful, and criticism should never have any lacuna. So criticism is based on fairness. It should be based on fairness. It should never be कि I'm not pulling on well with the writer, I will make some adverse comments. This is not acceptable. Julia Kristeva talked about intertextuality. As Stephen Greenblatt, the new historicist critic, who talked about text in the context, he said that text should be analyzed by putting it in the context in which it was written. What is the background? Because for making any kind of literary production, for writing any kind of literary work, three aspects are necessary. One is the man or race, second is the milieu, third is the moment. The French critic, renowned French critic, Hippolyte Taine, he said that three things are essential for producing literature: race, milieu, and moment. Race refers to man. Man refers to writer. Milieu refers to the surrounding, the circumstance, the background, the atmosphere. And moment refers to the particular moment in which the writer gets inspiration, the divine inspiration from the muse to write something. It is called the epiphanic moment. In that epiphanic moment, the writer is enthused, the writer is inspired, the writer is impregnated with wonderful ideas, with a plethora of ideas, and he goes on writing. And whatever he writes at that moment, that is literature. That may be poetry, that may be drama, that may be novel, that may be story, that may be any genre of literature. But one thing is clear: a poet or a writer, whenever he wants to write, he cannot write. Because for writing, there is a particular moment. There is a particular versatile moment, a fertile moment, a fecund moment, a productive moment is necessary. And you can't always expect that moment is available with you. You may miss it anywhere, but the moment it comes, you should try to seize it. You should try to capture it so that you don't have any problem. So, race, milieu, and moment. And criticism, or literary criticism for that matter, should be viewed as a kind of dialogue. Criticism should not be taken in a one-sided fashion. It should be viewed as a dialogue between the text, the reader, the writer, and the critic. When the four persons are coming together, naturally criticism will be fair, criticism will be objective, criticism will be impartial, criticism will be, free from prejudice. And it will be appreciable by all sections of people. It cannot be one-sided. Thank you very much. Your block 2 is over. Thank you. We'll stop it here.
Sir, I have one
Yes.
question.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, we will have two exams for this. Like
No,
one
you
in
may have 2 exams. You talk to RC Bhubaneswar about. I don't have sufficient idea. You talk to RC Bhubaneswar. Okay. About the exam, you talk to them. They will give you right idea.
सारे चले गए क्या? भाई किसी को पता है असाइनमेंट कहाँ देनी है? हेलो